Good Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Players with a day off after coming back and getting to work yesterday after the bye, getting ready to head down to Miami, 1 o'clock, to take on the Miami Dolphins. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. So Mary Kay, they played pretty good game against the Bengals, got that win on Monday night. Now the bye, and I know you've addressed this on your Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Do you think they fixed some things, or is there still kind of a work in progress type of thing for the Browns?
Well, I know they broke everything down. They did a lot of self-scouting, and they came back ready with some renewed vigor and to do some things better. One of the things they have to do much better is special teams. And then I think they will focus on some of the players that sort of really had the hot hand, or guys that were, really rolling in the first half. I think you'll see more of those guys in the second half. That includes guys like Sione Takitaki, obviously Amari Cooper. I think Myles Garrett is starting to heat up a lot. You saw Isaiah Thomas maybe earn some more reps. So I think they looked at it all, and I think they'll find some things that they can really build upon in the second half.
Some good news is both Denzel Ward, Chase Winovich, Wyatt Teller back on the field, and still not certain that they're going to play, but trending that way. Winovich, they activated him from injured reserve, so that 21-day window now to get him on the active roster. It's opened up. He talked about his injury and thoughts about where the Browns sit after that bye week.
When you zoom in on anybody's story, there's going to be times like it's just the reality of the situation. It was really hard when I got hurt, like the first or second play of the Jets game or whatever, and I had to play the whole game. I had my whole family there. There's like 12 of them, and I played. I just said, like, there's no way I'm going out like that. And after the game, like, knowing that I pulled it even before the MRI and stuff was really challenging for me. It was like I really had to. It was one of those moments when I had a former Patriots teammate. He said, moments like these are going to take a lot of resolve, and I'm here, and I felt great at practice. So, yeah, just keep it pushing, baby. That's it. These things are really important. I think the timing of everything, beating the Bengals, obviously, was very important from from the standpoint of, like, listen, we can play with anybody, we can win. Everything is still in front of us. And ultimately going into a bye week, being able to kind of reset with that mindset. Listen, like, we got a good team here, a lot of really good players, good coaches, a lot of pieces. Let's come back, let's take some time off, spend it with our families and loved ones, come back refreshed and recharged, and make this push. And, the energy was really high today at practice, and we're just going to keep it going.
Mary Kay, they're young on the defensive line, minus Garrett and Clowney. Can a guy like Winovich help out on that defensive line, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. As you mentioned before, he was designated for return, but he has not been activated yet, so he still has to be activated in order to play in Miami. So we'll see if that happens, but certainly I think they could use some good depth at defensive end. It's always good to keep rolling guys in there and keeping them fresh. But Isaiah Thomas, I think, has really helped out a lot in that regard. I mean, he's come on strong as a pass rusher. He's been very explosive. He's getting to the quarterback. He's making big plays. He's flashing. He's actually doing some of the things that we thought Perrion Winfrey was going to do this season. Of course, he's been a healthy scratch a couple of times, and, he still needs to pick it up a notch. So his upside potential is still there for the second half of the season. But they're lucky that they have guys like Isaiah Thomas, Martin Emerson, and other young guys like that stepping up.
And I know you've addressed this with your Hey Mary Kay. Do you think the Browns have a realistic chance to still win the division?
I think it's going to be really hard to win the division. If the Baltimore Ravens had lost last night, I would have still thought that perhaps it was in reach. But that victory by the Ravens last night to move them to 6-3, I think it's going to make it really tough. They've got a lot of catching up to do for the division, and the Baltimore Ravens have a really easy schedule going forward. And they have added to their defense. They traded for Roquan Smith. Justin Houston is really heating up. they're really coming together on their defense. And even though they have some injuries on their offense, with Rashad Bateman being out for the season and Mark Andrews missing the game last night, they're finding a way to get it done on that side of the ball. So I think it's going to be tough to catch them, but I still do think the Browns have a chance for a wild card spot if they can get on a little bit of a run.
This is from CBSSports.com. Midseason predictions for the rest of the year. So we take a look at the AFC North, and you see Jason Lockenfora, Pete Prisco, Ryan Wilson, John Breach, Jared Durbin, the 5 analysts. 3 of the 5 picked the Browns to finish at the basement in the AFC North. The other 2 pick them to finish 4th. They are in a bit of a hole because they're 3-5, but just your thoughts. They're still, again, they haven't played very well as yet.
I think the 4-game losing streak that the Browns endured has people thinking that this is a bad football team. But if you look at that, you can see that 4 of their 5 losses were by a combined total of 9 points. They were very, very close. They were just doing some dumb things at the end of games. They were making penalties. They were throwing interceptions. They were, they were not recovering an onside kick. They were not going down at the 1. I mean, they were just doing some things at the end of games that cost them those football games. And if they stop making the mental errors, if they stop making the mistakes, then, I think that they can win more games going forward. So to put them last, I don't know. I can't agree with that. To have the majority of those analysts having them finish last in the AFC North, especially with Deshaun Watson coming back, having Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Denzel Ward now coming back off of a concussion, having Amari Cooper playing so well, I feel like they're going to play some good football down the stretch.
This is from Jason OTC Twitter, and let's take a look. It's a draft retention chart. So the x-axis, expected draft picks on the roster. The y-axis is actual draft picks on the roster. And when you look at it, the Chiefs are a little bit ahead of the Browns, and the Browns are kind of second as far as retaining draft picks. Now, I suppose you could make the case it's because they're being patient with their young players, but it also shows a little bit of development, which for a number of years you wanted to see from this franchise.
Yeah, and I mean, they still need some of their young guys to really step up and prove that they are going to be the players the Browns believe they can be. Some of those guys include, Jacob Phillips, Jordan Elliott, Grant Delpit. These are some guys that they want to see really pop. JOK was starting to come on strong before he suffered a knee injury. So there are plenty of players on this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that they have a potential that they can still reach. And I think some of them still will. A few of them got off to slower starts in the first half of the season, but I think that's in part because they were first-time starters, first-time full-time starters. And it was taking them a while to sort of grow into their roles, but I think they still will do that. So, so I think they've done a nice job so far. Again, the jury is still out on a number of guys, but the future looks pretty bright.
The other thing is, through the first, 8 games, there have been a fair amount of key guys that have missed time for the Browns. When you think about both of their middle linebackers, their top 2 middle linebackers, Anthony Walker, Jacob Phillips. Myles Garrett has missed a couple of games. Jadeveon Clowney has missed a couple of games. The guy that they deem as their franchise quarterback, Deshaun Watson, hasn't played. Now, everybody has injuries, but they've had injuries at some key spots.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, offensively, they've been okay. So that hasn't been too bad. Now they've got David out for a little bit. They had Wyatt Teller out for a little bit. But for the most part, they've been intact on offense, again, especially, except for Deshaun being out this whole time, which everybody knew was going to happen. It's on the defensive side of the ball where I feel like they've had a lack of continuity. Even Denzel Ward, I felt like he got off to a slower start, in part because he was out with a hamstring injury for most of training camp. And now, he's missed 3 games with a concussion, and he has to try to hit the ground running against 2 of the best receivers in the NFL and the fastest receivers in the NFL. Same thing with Greg Newsome, missed a lot of time in training camp. And then, as you mentioned, Anthony Walker out for the season, Jacob Phillips out for the season, Myles Garrett flips his car, Jadeveon Clowney missed 3 or 4 games. So they just haven't had that, full complement on defense for most of the season. But I think they're rounding into shape now. I think Myles is on a mission to finish strong, and Jadeveon's back feeling better. I think they're going to be okay on that side of the ball.
All right. I know, you've addressed this with your Hey Mary Kay column. What do you think would constitute a failure this season for the Browns?
I have to tell you, in my mind, I think not making the playoffs, not at least grabbing one of those 3 wild card spots constitutes a failure for the Browns this season. They knew they were going to have to be without Deshaun Watson. They had to plan accordingly. They had to be able to get to the playoffs, even with him coming back and playing how many ever games he was going to play. Because, they did not go into that blindly. They knew he was going to miss time. And the rest of the roster is built not just to make the playoffs, but to actually go to the Super Bowl. So not making the playoffs at all, I think would be a failure for this season. They were expected to do it, and I don't think there are many excuses.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Also take a look at some pleasant surprises thus far in 2022. Sports for CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I'm just thinking about Kevin Stefanski. He's been a very good coach for us. I think we as fans, we get angry at Stefanski because it seems sometimes to us like he's just hiding behind his clipboard and he's throwing the ball when we think he should be running Chubb more. So I think sometimes when you're losing and the guys are down, it's because we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot. And as fans, we're getting aggravated. So it's like we should be 5-3 and not 3-5. And I think that if the defense can still step up to the plate and offense and special teams and everything just bring us together and we just concentrate on our strengths, which is defense, I think we could beat the Bills and the Dolphins if we just stick to our plans and have everyone step to the plate and just have fun and not try too hard. I think sometimes the guys just try too hard. And just be yourselves. What do you guys think? Thank you very much. I love your show. Thanks, guys. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mary Kay, people that talk about him hiding behind the clipboard, he's covering his mouth when he's talking so that people can't read his lips. They've figured out that you need to do that with the explosion of video and how quick things are transmitted. But a lot of the criticism of Kevin Stefanski is, I think it's unfounded at this point. I think he's done a pretty nice job. There are some things you disagree with, but you're going to have that anytime there's a football coach. You're not going to agree with everything a football coach does.
No, not at all. And I really think that, you're darned if you do and darned if you don't in terms of play calling. If you're not aggressive enough, then you get criticized for that. If you try trick plays and they fail, you get criticized for that. If you're too vanilla, you get criticized for that. When you're losing, it's just easy to be very, very critical. But one of the things that did not happen enough in the first half of the season, and I've talked about this a lot, is the fact that they didn't take the ball away enough and they gave it away too much. They didn't win the turnover battle enough. They were 0-5 in games in which they did not win the turnover battle. And that's just, that's how it's going to work. The statistics tell you that you're going to lose the game 70% of the time when you don't win the turnover battle. So that's something that's got to change in the second half of the season. They've got to protect the ball better, and they've got to start to take it away more. And I think they're going to do that. I think that, once again, I think Myles Garrett will be more dominant going forward. I think the secondary guys are going to come through a little bit more. I think, maybe Greg Newsome will get his first interception. Maybe Denzel Ward will come back and grab a couple. So I think that will help them considerably. Yeah,
I would agree. It's a point of emphasis. Kevin Stefanski always talks about taking the ball away, and they have not done that. This is from a Hey Mary Kate. Does it worry at all that the majority of the fan base is expecting a major improvement in Deshaun Watson's first game back?
Well, no, I'm not too worried about that, because I actually think that they're going to have a pretty easy time winning that game against the 1-6-1 Houston Texans. It's almost like a preseason tune-up for Deshaun Watson to go down there and play the Houston Texans. I think the Browns will probably dominate that football game. They should dominate that football game. The defense certainly should. And so therefore, I think they're going to be okay in that game. And then, that'll give him an opportunity to shake off the rust a little bit and get ready for those final 5 games, which include 3 division games and some difficult games. So I think they're going to be okay in that game. I think he's kind of lucky and fortunate that he has the Texans in his first time out.
All right, these are 3 Browns who have been pleasant surprises through 8 weeks of the season. This is from Dog Pound Daily. Number 3, center Ethan Posick. Number 2, a wide receiver Donovan Peoples-Jones. Number 1, Martin Emerson, the rookie cornerback. And Mary Kay, the thing that I say about Martin Emerson, the more I see him on the field, the more I want to see him on the field. Physical, aggressive, just everything you want in a defensive back.
Absolutely. He has been tremendous. He's climbed to number 17 overall amongst cornerbacks, according to Pro Football Focus. And that's pretty good. That's the highest ranked cornerback amongst the Browns right now. Greg Newsome is next, and he's down at like 46 or something like that. So, good for Martin. He's done a tremendous job. The moment isn't too big for him. He likes, to mix it up. He's very aggressive. He's not afraid to go for the football. Sometimes he does that. That's okay, because one of these days you're going to get your hands on some of those footballs. So good for him for that. He likes to go against the best. He was disappointed that Jamar Chase wasn't playing last week on Monday night with the Bengals. And he's really, really eager for this matchup with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
All right, Kevin Stefanski talked about the Dolphins facing them, what their strengths are, as well as the Browns coming out of that bye week.
You start to watch their tape, and those 2 receivers are special. Quarterback's playing at a high level. Like I said, we'll get into more of the specifics as we get going this week, but just watching them, they're doing a real nice job being able to push the ball down the field, get the ball in their hands on some catch and run opportunities. Yeah, I think you definitely look at that, Ashley, and then kind of see where the tape goes, see where the numbers go and those type of things. And it is true, I think, year in and year out, and you can get as specific as you want in terms of a run type or a coverage type, those type of things. There are some things that you come out of the spring feeling like you'll be good at, and then you're just not for whatever the reason, and there's always many reasons. But I think that was part of the process of looking at those things and saying, can we get better and at that particular thing? Can we put in the work to get better at that? And if the answer is no, you got to move on and try something else.
Okay, are there any specific changes you think we'll see more of, or things that you're kind of keeping an eye out for as far as change goes with the Browns coming out of the bye?
Well, one of the things is Jerome Ford was also designated for return from injured reserve, where he had been with an ankle injury. So I think you can look to him to possibly get back on kickoff returns as soon as this Miami game. So that's one thing. I think that, I think they'd like to see more of David Bell. I mean, it's time for their third round rookie receiver to come on strong in the second half and show that the lights are on for him. So that's one thing. Probably some more of Isaiah Thomas, because he has earned that. He's got a nose for the football, and he's been explosive in rushing the passer. So I think that you'll see more of him, more of Sione Takitaki, because he's been the best linebacker on the field so far this season. And then, just some things like that. I think that, Kareem Hunt is somebody that I think they should see more of too. Give him the ball a little bit more, and maybe even try out a little bit more of the Chunt backfield.
Yeah, I would agree. It was effective when it was used. So let's see if those are things they do moving forward. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Look a little bit closer at the Dolphins, the opponent for the Browns, coming up Sunday in Miami. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Maybe cliche, but there's no I in team. The only identity that matters is we. The collective effort to love thy neighbor is needed now more than ever. The responsibility behind pronouns such as I, me, and mine impact we, us, and ours. So understand that you make all the difference in the team. He, him, her, or she can't disturb our peace, since we control our destiny as student athletes. This is the power of pronouns.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, love the show. Long-time viewer, occasional caller. So after doing some extensive rewatching of some Browns older games, since Kevin Stefanski took over the Browns, if the Browns had a consistent defense, Kevin Stefanski would be one of the best coaches in the league. Because I've watched his games back, like when we played Kansas City in the playoffs or when we played them to open up the season. Like, he can call offense with the best defenses, and his offense will stand and hold its own. But if a consistent defense, the Browns would actually be really good because his offense can stand with any defense out there. When he's on this game, there's not a defense that can stop the Browns. It's just our defense can't say the same. But get a consistent defense, the defense is going to surprise a lot of people. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mary Kay, the defense has been a disappointment in the first 8 games. They've been banged up, but you expected them to be much better than they have been.
Yeah, that's true. And they're going to have to be much better in the second half of the season because, again, if Josh Allen plays, and we don't know that yet, everyone's awaiting word on his elbow injury. If he doesn't play on November 20th, that represents an enormous break for the Cleveland Browns. It could actually be almost season changing if they can get a victory in Buffalo. But you've got some really good quarterbacks coming up in Tua, in Josh Allen, in Tom Brady. You got Lamar Jackson again. You got Joe Burrow again. So, they're going to have to definitely pick up their game, but I think they will. I really think they will. Again, I think that, whenever you've got Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney on the field, those two guys can wreak havoc. And I think they will do that beginning in Miami.
Let's take a look at some of the things for Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback for the Dolphins. All right, so the Dolphins are 6-0 when he starts and finishes the game. He's been knocked out a couple, some concussion issues without question. Take a look at this one from Pro Football Focus. On 20-plus yard throws, he has a 94.6 passing grade, second in the NFL. 18 completions, second in the NFL. 64.3 completion percentage, that's best in the league. Passer rating of almost 118, second best in the league. Now, it helps that you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, but he's getting the job done from the quarterback position.
He really is. But as you mentioned, it's so much easier to get the job done from the quarterback position when you've got amazing receivers and very fast receivers that have excellent hands and that are catching the ball and making plays for him the way that Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are. Jalen Waddle has 6 touchdown catches already this season. We know some of Tyreek's stats. He's on pace to eclipse 2,000 yards and set the NFL record for yards. Of course, he will have one more game to do it than Calvin Hill did, but he still has an opportunity to go ahead and set that record, and that's pretty remarkable. He's first in the NFL in yards, first in the NFL in receptions. He only has 3 touchdown catches, but I'm sure that he will end up with plenty of those as well. So yeah, I do think that it's just so much easier to look great from the QB position when you have those kind of guys making plays for you.
Yeah, without question. And Hill and Waddle with the speed are impressive. Okay, so the offense is impressive. The defense has struggled. Now, they did trade for Bradley Chubb, but look at these numbers. Rushing, they're giving up 4.6 yards a play. That's exactly the same number that the Browns are, and we know what we've thought of the Browns' rush defense in spots this year. Passing, they're giving up 7 yards a play. They're one of the bottom 10 teams as far as pass defense goes in the NFL. They have scored a defensive touchdown. They've had a fumble recovery, return for a touchdown. And you see the Dolphin fans are kind of comparing it to the defense of a season ago, and it's going backwards. So they did go out and they traded for Bradley Chubb, gave up a lot of capital, signed him to a big extension. But this, again, is a defense that has some spots you can expose.
Yes, absolutely. And if you can possess the football and if you can run the ball down their throats with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and whoever else, then, you can make some hay that way, and you can keep Tua and Jalen and Tyreek off the field, which is what you're going to want to do. So it's a game of matchups. And the Browns, look how they matched up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Look at what the Cincinnati Bengals did their next time out. I mean, Joe Mixon, who rushed for 27 yards against the Browns, had 5 touchdowns and 1 million fantasy points the following week. So it sort of is how you match up against a team. And this could be one of those situations where the Browns' strengths can overpower some of the Dolphins' strengths, and we'll just have to see how it goes.
Yeah, this is a team that kind of reminds you a little bit of the Bengals because you have those wide receivers that are really talented, similar to the Bengals. Now, Chase didn't play, and you have a running back that probably not quite as good as Joe Mixon, but the Dolphins are similar to the Bengals in that the Browns should be able to match up reasonably well with them.
Yeah, the only thing was that the Bengals did not have their number 1 receiver in that game in Jamar Chase. So that would kind of be like, not taking both of those guys off the field, but it would probably be like taking Jalen Waddle off the field or even Tyreek Hill off the field. So, they'll have both of those guys for this game. And, it's double trouble, and the Browns are going to have to find a way to slow them down.
Do you kind of view the Dolphins and the Bills games coming up almost as extended conference games, because those are two of the teams that if you're going to chase down a wild card, you want the tiebreaker against, without question?
Yeah, the tiebreakers are huge. The Browns have very little margin for error right now, especially because over the weekend, a lot of things didn't go their way in terms of the wild card picture, with the Jets beating the Bills and some of the other things that happened over the weekend. It just did not really help them at all. So yeah, you need these tiebreakers. Any AFC game is almost as big as an AFC North game. And these are huge, and they can really flip the script on their season if they can go grab this one and then maybe even beat the Bills, especially if Josh Allen is not playing.
Yeah, and again, Josh Allen has a UCL injury, so it's basically the ligament in your throwing arm. They will update it tomorrow after they get further tests. All right, this is kind of interesting. So Mike McDaniel, first-year head coach of the Dolphins, had an issue with trying to contain Justin Fields running the football. He ran for an NFL record, 176 yards in their game Sunday. He was asked, he was seen on the sidelines telling Justin Fields to stop it. They asked him about it. Here is Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Dolphins.
Third quarter, about the 5-minute 16 mark, you spoke to Justin Fields on the side. It seemed like you said to him to stop running the ball. Did you kind of knew that's what the game plan was for them going into the game, or?
No, I just wanted him to stop scrambling. And it was pretty irritating because he didn't listen at all. He didn't take the coaching.
Mary Kay, gotta love the response. Didn't take the coaching, and I forgot that Mike McDaniel was here as a receivers coach in the Kyle Shanahan era.
Yes, he definitely was. And he's a smart guy. He's funny. He marches to his own drummer. He says stuff like that. He does a lot of things like that. I think he's really cool. He's different. He's fresh. And he's certainly having plenty of success this season.
Well, let's hope for the Browns they can stop that one and get that one much needed win against the Dolphins coming up Sunday in Miami. Mary Kay, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer at cleveland.com, will join us. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Don't go anywhere.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. So, Ashley, Browns with a day off yesterday, though. Wyatt Teller, Denzel Ward back on the field. Not sure they're going to be able to play. How important are those two guys, especially given the team they're going to face, the Miami Dolphins, Sunday at 1 o'clock?
Well, Wyatt Teller is just so important. We'll start with him. So what the Browns do on offense, because he is maybe the best pulling guard in the NFL. Him and Joel Bitonio are the two best offensive guards in the league. I truly believe that. They're the number one tandem, and he just is so important for the Browns' main objective on offense. And Yelda Froholt has stepped up in his absence. And I know Wyatt was talking with us about, how he would give Yelda as much advice as he could on the sidelines and watching film and things like that. But, he's a guy who really wants to play. And then on the other side of the ball, to get Denzel Ward back in this game would be huge, because obviously the strength of this Miami team right now, I think, is their passing game. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are a really dynamic duo. Particularly, they are nightmares in open space. So I think this is going to be a true test for the Browns secondary to see if they've maybe fixed some of these problems that we saw from earlier in the season.
Yeah, they certainly looked better against the Bengals as well as the Ravens. So let's hope they got the defense ironed out. All right, you wrote an article, 3 Browns players who have surprised in the first half of the season. Take us through that and kind of the thought behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting, I think, when we heard from Andrew Berry last Wednesday at the bye week press conference, how he brought up how this team's strengths might look different than what they originally anticipated. And I think we've kind of seen that play out. So the 3 guys I focused on for that article were Martin Emerson, who is a guy who I think the Browns were always very high on. I think we saw that by how they drafted him in the 3rd round. And this was a guy who was projected to go anywhere from the 3rd through the 5th rounds of this year's draft. No one really knew what to make of him. But with Denzel Ward's injury, it gave him an opportunity, and he really, I think, has had a very nice year. You look at PFF at some of the advanced stats. I mean, he's the most targeted defensive back on the Browns. He's one of the most targeted rookie corners in the league because, of course, teams like to test out rookies. But he is really holding opponents and not allowing them to make many big receptions on him. And I think the handful of them that you do see, for example, that amazing George Pickens catch that he had when the Browns played the Steelers, that was on Martin Emerson's assignment, but that was just an amazing catch. There wasn't really anything else he could have done differently. And then up front in the defense, I really focused on Sione Takitaki. I think is having his best year of his career. And that's a name at linebacker who I always think we think of him as a steady contributor and a big help in the run game, maybe a rotational player, but it's kind of to the point now where it's for the Browns, thank God they have him because of Anthony Walker's injury. Jacob Phillips, he has an injury now. He's obviously on IR with that pec injury, but he wasn't really popping before that. And then Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he's a guy we thought would make a big second-year jump immediately, but he's struggled with injuries too. I think he had a groin issue just a few weeks ago that he was battling. So I think he's kind of been in and out, but Taki has really stepped up for them. And if you watched him against the Bengals, he was just flying all over the field. And then up front, on the line, I singled out Isaiah Thomas because I think what he's done in limited snaps has just been so unexpected. Unlike, an Alex Wright who has played well, but I think the Browns kind of always anticipated that Alex Wright would contribute in some capacity this year. Isaiah Thomas is a guy who a few months ago, we were questioning if he would even be able to make the initial 53-man roster, given how this team has made up. But he's had some really big plays the last few weeks. Obviously, the fumble recovery against the Ravens. He got his first career sack against Joe Burrow when the Browns beat the Bengals. So he's had a really, I think, kind of surprising start to his year that's really helped them when they've been thin at edge rusher this year.
Yeah, I would agree. He's flashed. He certainly is somebody that you kind of went, wow, So Thomas has been a pleasant surprise. Another article you wrote, 3 players who have to step up in the second half of the season if the Browns are going to make the run they want to.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's kind of funny looking back on it, as I was writing these, both of these articles kind of focused on the defense, and I think that's right. I mean, we've had so many questions about that unit that guys have popped that we didn't expect, and guys that we did expect to pop early on necessarily haven't. So like one guy I focused on for that was Greg Newsome, for example, right? Greg Newsome hasn't played poorly really this year. He's shown off his speed a handful of times. I think of that amazing chase down tackle he had of Austin Eckler against the Chargers. But I think what this defense needs is some game-changing plays, and Greg Newsome is still in search of his first career interception. I know he was jonesing for that at the end of last season, and he still hasn't been able to pick anybody off yet this year. So I think they're really, especially with Denzel Ward working his way back from the concussion protocol, I think a few of those game-changing plays from Greg Newsome could go a long way. I mentioned JOK in the last article, but really, he's another guy, too, that I've singled out here just because I think injuries have really kind of slowed him down again this year in a way that we didn't expect. Now, I think what's interesting is we kind of saw him, I think, at his best against the Baltimore Ravens when he was shadowing Lamar Jackson, and you really got to see his athleticism. He, of course, forced that fumble that Isaiah Thomas recovered at the end of the game. But then he was out with an injury all of Cincinnati week and obviously didn't play in the game. So again, I think him just being available and getting healthy are key. I'm really curious to see what he looks like after this week. And then another guy who's kind of been in a similar boat, I would argue to a worse extent, is Jadeveon Clowney, just nagging injuries repeatedly. He suffered that ankle injury against the Jets, wasn't able to be out there for a couple weeks, got back, and then the following 3 days at practice, he showed up with about 3 injuries on their injury report and had to sit out again. And so he's just kind of been in and out and hasn't really been able to replicate so far all of that pressure and, really stout run defense that he did last season. And I know he entered the offseason saying it was the healthiest he had felt in a long time. So it's too bad that didn't carry over into the early part of the season. But with him and JOK especially, I think the Browns need some big plays from them. I think those guys getting healthy will go a long way to solving a lot of the problems that this defense had in the first half of the year.
Yeah, I would agree. Those are guys that are quick too, that the speed guys that can make the game-changing type plays on defense that the Browns are looking for. Ashley Bastock and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll look at some power rankings, plus the Nick Chubb is good part of our show. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So this is NFL's Week 10 power rankings and non-quarterback MVPs from ESPN. So they have the Eagles 1, Chiefs 2, Bills 3. The Browns are ranked 20th coming off of the bye. Non-quarterback MVP Nick Chubb. An honorable mention goes to Myles Garrett, who is back playing like a Defensive Player of the Year contender. And Ashley, at 3-5, you can't really argue with the Browns being in the 20s. I thought they'd be higher, but it is they are where they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think they kind of are what their record shows, especially for the early season struggles. But I do think singling out those two guys in particular is definitely the right way to go. I mean, what Nick Chubb does that's so impressive to me, and I've kind of talked about this before, is that he's kind of this perfect mixture of old school and new school back, like both in terms of his personality, right? He doesn't like to talk a lot or showboat, or you'll get something occasionally from him on social media, like his awesome hype video from the beginning of this year, but not really a showy guy. And then on the field, he's a guy who can run you over, can stiff arm opposing defenders, but he's also a fairly elusive runner. I haven't checked it since Sunday's games, but I know PFF had him with the best elusiveness running grade out of all running backs in the league. So he does both of those things really well, and I think we've gotten to see that already this year. And Myles Garrett, I think as we get further and further away from that car accident he was in, he's just looking better each week. I mean, he admitted to us last week, maybe he came back too soon from that, but I really think against the Bengals, like you kind of saw, as close as I think as you're going to get as a return to form from him as we get deeper into the season.
So every day when we sit down to plan the show, the guys that work on the show behind the scenes always have these Nick Chubb stats. So I have deemed this the Nick Chubb is good portion of the show. This is from PFF Browns. By came and went. Nick Chubb still leads the NFL with 10 rushing touchdowns, 51 missed tackles forced, and 27 runs of 10-plus yards. And Ashley, it's not a surprise that the Browns are going to give this ball to this guy the ball. He's going to get the ball, and to Browns fans' chagrin, they'd like him to get it more, but he is able to run by people, run over people, run around people.
Right, and I think when you look at this offense over the last 3 or so years, these numbers for Nick Chubb in terms of his numbers of carries especially is pretty common under Kevin Stefanski. What I will say is I get the frustration because obviously Jacoby Brissett has, I think maybe picked it up a notch here or so, but obviously he is limited compared to Deshaun Watson, and they kind of knew what Jacoby was coming into this season. So I think I get frustration from that respect of, hey, we don't really have our quarterback right now. Can you maybe give it to the guy who's the best running back in the league more than 20 times a game? That would be lovely. I understand that frustration, but what makes Nick Chubb so effective, and we've heard Stump Mitchell, the running backs coach, talk about this before, is that he's such a patient runner. And that's where I think being an NFL running back, there is some art to it, right? A guy like Kareem Hunt is going to run opponents over. That's why he has that Tasmanian Devil nickname. But I know this is something that they've wanted to work with Kareem on, and that Stump Mitchell hammers home to him, is being patient, waiting for the blocks, reading what's happening around you. And obviously you have to do all that very quickly in real time in a game. But Nick Chubb is so good at doing that. And when you are patient and able to read what's happening in front of you and process it really quickly, that's when you get some of those longer runs that he's leading the league with right now.
So 4 things that Andrew Berry may be, and we stress may be wrong on. This is from Dog Pound Daily. Number 4, undervaluing defensive tackles. Number 3, not adding depth at wide receiver. Number 2, poor draft choices. And number 1, 4 things Andrew Berry may be wrong on, massive extensions. And Ashley, when you look at that, the massive extension one, that's really a catch-22, because you want to reward guys that you've drafted, that you've developed, that you have, that you've had success with, and then, if you don't extend them and they go somewhere else and continue to play well, you're going to get beat up for that too.
Yeah, I actually think the extensions that they've given out have been pretty good. They've been almost prophetic in a lot of ways. Andrew Berry extended Denzel Ward this offseason, and after that, the market kind of exploded. He was maybe the highest paid corner for a couple of days. And I think Andrew Berry is very good at it, and this front office is very good at managing cap and things like that. So those extensions don't really bother me, I think, as much as they do some people, because I understand kind of like the bigger picture here. And a lot of times when you look at this pattern, he's very good at acquiring guys, or even like, trading for Amari Cooper. The wide receiver market kind of exploded after that. It's kind of crazy that he was able to get him at that salary for only a 5th round pick. So I do think this front office is particularly good at that. Some of these other ones, I've been saying they feel a veteran wide receiver short. I know Mary Kay Cabot has been saying the same thing as well. So that I can't really gripe with. Obviously, the defensive tackle situation, I think we saw how abysmal it was when they were getting run over in the early portion of the season. They need somebody to step up there. And I think some of the draft picks, I think they do have question marks. I think some of those names listed there were guys taken later. I think typically if a guy like, Perion Winfrey, for example, if he pans out, that's kind of a bonus, right? He was a day 3 guy. But I think your guys who you take in the 1st through 3rd rounds are guys you expect to be at least contributors, in most cases starters. So I do think, a guy like Jed Wills has been having a better year this year, but he still has a lot to prove. I think some of these higher draft picks they've taken, the Jacob Phillipses, the Grant Delpits, like they do, I think, have some question marks by then that, have to get answered sooner rather than later at this point, given where those guys are in their careers.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a fair question about it. On the flip side of it, though, you've got the Donovan Peoples-Jones that you hit on late, and there have been a couple in the 6th and 7th round that have been contributors that you've got. So drafting's an art form. It's kind of like play calling. You're going to look at it and say, see, you should have taken that guy. See, you should have made that. So I guess it comes with the position, but I that's fair. There have been some 2nd and 3rd round choices, Delpit, Phillips, Elliott, that haven't panned out so far. But that's why you wait 3 or 4 years to judge instead of 1 or 2.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of these guys are just going to take time. I think with Grant Delpit especially, like we're just kind of really starting to see maybe what kind of player he could be. Because as a rookie in 2020, he missed his entire season with an Achilles injury. He was basically a rookie last year. So I do think, though, when you are talking about a draft, sometimes this team has gotten lucky. DPJ is maybe the best example of a guy you pick late and kind of bet on upside and hope it works out. But, I really do think that some of these guys who were taken higher, need to kind of step up into larger roles when given the opportunity and make those kind of game-changing plays, especially on the defensive side of the ball when they're in the game.
Yeah, agree wholeheartedly. If not, you're going to run into some salary cap issues coming up in a hurry with this team. Ashley Bastock and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. We'll look more intensely on the Dolphins. Browns getting ready to play the Dolphins Sunday at 1. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Take a look at the season Tua Tagovailoa has put together, quarterback for the Dolphins. Passer rating, almost 116, first in the NFL. Yards per attempt, first in the NFL. TD passes per attempt percentage, first in the NFL. Winning percentage, third in the NFL. Completion percentage, almost 70%, third in the NFL. And a 15-3 touchdown to interception ratio. So, Ashley, Tua's getting it done. It's made a little bit easier because you got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and they make quarterbacks look pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I just think really we were just talking about this on the episode of our Orange and Brown Talk podcast that we recorded today. I just think he has it made with those two guys because they are nightmares in space. All he has to do is kind of place the ball in their vicinity, and I think this is why it's going to be such a tough test for this Browns secondary because that speed is so hard to replicate, especially the speed that Tyreek Hill has in particular. I think the Browns are going to try their best to do that in practice. Maybe a guy like Anthony Schwartz is going to be playing some Tyreek Hill this week as they prepare for Miami. But overall, I think that's what makes Tua so lethal. He doesn't have the biggest arm in the league or anything, but you look at yards per completion, it's because he has great receivers like that. And I think the Dolphins kind of went the route that we see a lot of teams in the NFL go, where maybe they have a younger quarterback who has some question marks. So they say, you know what, we're going to surround this guy with as much talent in the pass game as we can and see what he can do. And so far, you know, he's gotten it done despite having to miss some time with those concussions earlier this year.
So I watched a lot of their game against the Bears, and they threw over the middle a lot. This is along those lines. Pro Football Focus has this. So most receptions gaining 15-plus yards. Tyreek Hill is first with 30. Jalen Waddle is tied for second with Justin Jefferson with 22. But what they do is they get them out into space, and those guys are fast. And Tua is giving them the ability to run onto the ball. He's on target, which that is the key right there.
Yeah, I mean, like that graphic before said, only 3 interceptions this year, right? I mean, he's not really giving the ball away either, but yeah, because of those guys, again, because of their speed, you just kind of get them the ball. If they have a little alley, you know, they're going to take it. They find those gaps really easy, I think. And when you watch them, that's the number one thing that stands out. Tua's taking care of the ball right now, and he's finding those guys, and those guys are taking care of their end of the bargain too, and kind of turning some of these shorter passes, or like you said, passes up the middle, into more explosive plays that maybe other receivers wouldn't quite be able to do the same way.
So obviously, Hill and Waddle are concerns for the Browns. How do the Browns deal with that? What can the Browns exploit when you look at this matchup?
I don't know. You know, I think a lot of teams ask themselves that question facing this team. I am not envious of Joe Woods this week. I genuinely think this is kind of a concerning matchup, given what the Browns' issues have been. You know, I think really considering the problems we've seen with this defense, I think a lot of it was confusion early on and maybe the system being a little too complicated. I know fans are, you know, jonesing, I think, for a little bit more man-to-man in this game than zone defense. I think you have to do whatever it takes to make sure you aren't just letting those guys run all over you. And I think really a lot of it is going to start with Myles Garrett and those guys up front finding a way to put pressure on Tua Tagovailoa. Because like I said, he hasn't really thrown the ball away. He hasn't been sacked a whole ton. Obviously, we remember the big sacks, the big times he was brought down when he suffered those concussions, but that hasn't really been the norm for him this year. So I think it's all about the front of this defense finding a way to pressure him, because guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are so hard to contain once they have the ball in their hands, once they have an opening. So I think you kind of have to start at the source if you're this defense and kind of simplify things in the back end, make sure those guys are covered, and make sure you're finding a way to generate pressure. Move Myles Garrett around the line if you have to. You know, I think it would be really interesting to see him come, since Tua is left-handed, to come over to that side and kind of go at his blind side from the opposite side of where he normally plays, because I think you really have to find a way to take advantage in that aspect of the game and stop these receivers from getting going in the first place.
Yeah, I would say you want to try to get some balls batted down. He's not the tallest guy in the world, so that's another one. The Dolphins' defense is not stellar. So they're giving up about as many yards, exactly 4.6 yards per carry as the Browns. So that's the other thing. Nick Chubb and that offensive line, start moving people around now.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's why I think it's so important that if Wyatt Teller can play this game, that he plays, because of that pulling that he does and the kind of openings that the front of this offensive line can generate for Nick Chubb, can generate for Kareem Hunt. But I also think the Browns really will need another performance out of Jacoby Brissett, kind of like what they got against the Bengals. And truly, that's like maybe the best game Jacoby Brissett is going to have, what he did against Cincinnati. But I really think you have to come close to replicating that and getting, especially that connection with Amari Cooper going, because if you can get those passes and maybe some explosive plays in that pass game from your reliable targets, Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, it will help open things up on the ground for Nick Chubb especially. But I do think, Nick Chubb has a chance here once again. We basically say that every week. The joke has become on our preview podcast, like we're basically always taking the Nick Chubb over for total rushing yards in any game at this point. I don't even know what the number would have to be to make me pick the under, because Nick Chubb has truly just been that consistent this year.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, appreciate the time and the insight. Good stuff, Ashley. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Ashley Bastock. Make sure you check it out. Browns beat reporter, cleveland.com, as well as the pages of the Plain Dealer. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow on Sports for CLE.